What's going on, everybody? Noah from Stage 3 Motorsports here, and today we're going to be taking a quick first look at Ford's new 2022 Maverick pickup. Now, I will put a quick disclaimer in here that I put in pretty much all of these videos where I give my thoughts or our first reactions on these vehicles, and that's that this is not going to have every single tiny spec and detail on this truck. There might be a few little things I missed from the reveal. I'm just going to be generally talking about what we saw, what we like, and what our thoughts are on this vehicle, and what we'd like to see with it in the future. So if you're interested in that kind of information and you want a general overview of this truck, it should be pretty helpful for you. But if you are looking for every tiny spec and detail, there are some other videos out there that may be better suited to you, and you can obviously check out Ford's website as well. Now, to get right into the meat of it, the Ford Maverick is a pickup truck, but it's not a pickup truck in the traditional sense that you might be thinking. Whereas Ford has stuff like the F-150 or their Super Duty or the Ranger that are all true body-on-frame pickup trucks that are designed to tow and haul and do work, this Maverick is a little bit more of a car SUV pickup blend, and you can kind of think of it more in terms of being like a Ute or something like a Subaru Brat or even like an El Camino or something like that with far less power. But the idea is that it's aimed at an audience of people who were maybe not initially truck owners or that want the utility of having a pickup truck bed but don't need all the functionality or the heavy duty towing capabilities or, you know, the utility that comes with a true body-on-frame pickup truck. Now, obviously, you can see this quite a bit in the actual size of the Maverick. It's not very big, and it sits on the Bronco Sport platform, which is also the same as like the Escape platform. And they've obviously modified that a bit to accommodate the fact that there's a pickup bed on the back of it. But it's definitely intended to be focused more at urban environments. And because they're looking to get into a market of people who were not initially truck owners, it's pretty clear that Ford has no interest in trying to sell these to somebody who's like a ranch hand in Texas that needs a Super Duty and hauls hay bales in the back or is pulling a fifth wheel or something like that. I think it makes a lot of sense where Ford's headed with it, and the market that they're going for definitely does exist. A lot of the people that are going to be looking to buy the Maverick are either people who have already bought a Tacoma or a Ranger but maybe didn't need all the off-road capability or the towing capability of those trucks or wanted something even smaller. And then, like I said, it could also be people who haven't owned pickups that already own something like an Escape or have a little hatchback or a station wagon but want to have that open air true pickup truck bed for hauling things, whether it be a little bit of lumber or some bags of soil or their mountain bikes or camping gear, any of those things. Some other vehicles that are kind of similar to the Maverick that I think people are going to be shopping alongside this truck are going to be things like that new 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz pickup, which is also kind of an SUV pickup truck blend, or even things like the Honda Ridgeline, which I believe those are actually a little bit bigger than the Maverick, and I don't know all the specs and details there, but with them being more utility urban-based pickup trucks, I think a lot of folks are going to have those on their list when they're looking at the Maverick and comparable vehicles. So it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. Now, to move on and talk more specifically about powertrains on the Maverick, it comes as a base model with a hybrid powertrain, which is a little bit interesting, but it does make sense that Ford went this direction because they are obviously pushing for something that's more fuel efficient. They've kind of cut cars completely out of their lineup, at least here in the United States, and with the recent release of the F-150 Lightning, it's no surprise that they want something that's lower emissions and has the fuel economy that they're looking for across the lineup. This is a 2.5-liter inline four paired with an electric motor, and it's non-turbo, so it's not one of their EcoBoost engines. It's just naturally aspirated, and the electric motor is actually developed in-house by Ford, but the overall platform they're using there is very similar to the Escape hybrid that they've had in the past. So it should be pretty predictable, and I think it's a fairly safe bet on Ford's end. Now, with that, this base model hybrid version is only front-wheel drive, and it is paired to a CVT, so there's not a lot in the way of exciting driving there. I think it'll have enough power to get itself around just fine. I don't think it's going to be thrilling by any means, and I personally am not a big fan of CVTs. I don't like the way that they feel. They're just kind of slushy, and in the past from other manufacturers, I've had friends that have owned vehicles with CVTs and had a lot of issues and have ended up at the dealership multiple times with problems related to them. So I already kind of have a bad taste in my mouth for that. I wish Ford would have optioned it slightly differently, but it is what it is. It'll probably work fine for what this truck is intended for. I just don't think it's really going to be that exciting. But like I said, not necessarily the intended purpose here. Now, to build off that, there is another powertrain option available. So if you are wanting to move into something that's all-wheel drive, or you want something with a bit more power, then you can option for Ford's 2-liter EcoBoost motor. And this is also an inline 4-cylinder, but it's going to be a bit more powerful, whereas the hybrid is putting out around 191 horse. This is closer to 277 horse. And this also allows you to add in the FX4 off-road package because it's all-wheel drive at that point. And you can also add on the towing package to bring this truck from a 2,000-pound towing capacity up to a 4,000-pound towing capacity. To give a little perspective, if you're not somebody that's big into towing, the base model 2,000-pound towing capacity Ford describes as having the ability to pull 2 jet skis on a little trailer pretty easily, and they actually show a shot of this in the reveal. Whereas if you bump up and add their towing package with that 2-liter EcoBoost engine in there and everything else, that 4,000-pound capacity will allow you to pull something like a 20-foot camping trailer or a decent-sized boat behind you without too much trouble. And obviously, they're not really aiming for this truck to be a tow rig, but it does add a bit more utility to it and allows people to use it as more of a pickup truck, even with it still being a SUV or crossover platform. So for myself personally, I think I would probably opt for that more powerful 2-liter EcoBoost motor here, as well as the towing package, or at least the FX4 package to make this thing a little bit more off-road capable. I think that it just gives the truck a lot better utility. So moving on from powertrain options and focusing more in on the actual Maverick bed design, Ford is very proud of this little bed they created. It's kind of funny how much time they spent talking about it in the reveal and how focused it was, which, I mean, it is kind of the party piece of this, seeing as it's what separates it from a regular Escape or Bronco Sport. But it is a 4.5-foot bed, as I mentioned before, and it opens up to 6 feet when you have the tailgate down. So it's not going to wow any full-size pickup truck owners by any means, but for folks that are used to using a hatchback or a station wagon or even just a smaller SUV, this is still probably going to be quite a bit of space for you. And with it being open air, you'll easily be able to fit some mountain bikes back here, or a surfboard or a kayak. And I think you could even get away with squeezing a motorcycle or something on there too. Now, to kind of help aid in this, and since people are probably going to have the tailgate down quite a bit on these trucks, Ford added this multi-position latch system where you can actually latch the tailgate kind of halfway open or all the way flat, depending on what you need. So if you want it to prop something up or add a little bit of a lip to keep things from rolling out the back, you can kind of reset that latch and attach it in a way to where it won't drop all the way flat. It's a fairly clever little idea. I think it'll help out a lot here, and it makes that tailgate a bit more useful in this kind of truck. Now, to go along with this bed and tailgate design that Ford has, they've added in some other little features and add-ons and different upgrades that you can put in there to kind of build it out. And they've actually branded the whole bed of the truck and this cargo area. They call it a Flexbed. And then they've also been using the term makerspace with that as well, which is just kind of goofy to me. I'm not sure why they felt the need to add this like corporate jargon or brand a pickup truck bed, but I do get what they were aiming for here, or the idea that they're trying to portray. I guess they're maybe trying to make it more approachable, but nonetheless, this bed has got a few different things. Obviously, you have some tie downs in the corners and along the sides. You do have the cargo rails with those cleats that you can slide in there or remove to give you some alternate areas to lash cargo down or tie things in. Then there's some other stuff like the storage cubbies on the bed sides that sit kind of back towards the tailgate, where you can drop in ratchet straps. Supposedly you could even fit a 2-liter of soda in there. Obviously any other recovery gear or tools you wanted to keep in that, you could. So just some more handy closed off storage that doesn't affect the actual space within the bed. And then Ford has some other accessories that can be added on as well. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot to mention is in a upgraded package, I believe it's on the Lariats, you can option in to have a 12-volt outlet in the bed as well. This isn't the same as that big generator system that the F-150s are getting in this current generation, but it is a handy little plug that I think a lot of people could make use of. Now, to talk about the other add-ons and accessories, Ford has kind of an interesting DIY thing going on with this truck that I've never seen before from any other company. The thought is they wanted to make adding in accessories or building your own accessories a lot more simple and approachable for somebody who maybe hasn't done this all the time or doesn't want to front the cash to buy a Ford specific really nice accessory that's already done. So what I mean by this is there's actually a built-in little plastic cap that you can pop open in the bed, and there's a wiring harness behind it that's already there ready to go. So if you need to wire something in with power, like say an extra set of bed lights, you can tap into that harness that they already provided without having to drill through the bed or run a wiring harness all the way up to your battery and add a fuse in and everything like that. which this is super smart. I hope that this becomes a standard on some of their other pickup trucks and that other brands pick up on this as well. It kind of fits in line with the switches that we saw in the Raptor, where, you know, they had the auxiliary switches all lined up. They're already fused and wired, and you could just tie into them from the engine bay. That kind of moved into a lot of Ford's other vehicles, and you can get them in the Ranger Tremor now. You can get them in the Super Duties and some other vehicles like that. So I think that this really fits in line and definitely helps those of us who want to modify our vehicles. So bed wiring is definitely a big plus in my book. Another way they kind of showcase this DIY side of the Maverick was in one of the videos. They actually show a bike rack or a bike mount that you could build, where if you got a 2x6 of wood, it slots in kind of behind the wheel wells there with some grooves that are already built into the bed. And then you could buy the actual mount for the bike forks from Ford, put that on the wood, put it together, and create a mount that would run you less than it would cost to buy an actual full-blown pre-assembled mount. I can appreciate what Ford's going for here, and in the world of truck modification, any way that they're willing to accommodate that is going to be a positive, as opposed to trying to block things out and keep people from modifying vehicles. So I do still definitely appreciate what they're aiming for. So with that bike mount, it is kind of a neat idea. It'll be funny to see if people actually do that with their Mavericks, and there's a number of other options with slotting in 2x4s and 2x6s in different areas on this truck to where you could build cargo racks or create a different storage solution setup that works for how you want to use the pickup bed in your specific Maverick. I do actually have one final thought here though on all of this bed stuff before we move on to talking about the interior and the cab of the vehicle, and that's that I'm not sure why Ford doesn't offer a longer bed option here. Now, like I said, I feel like the 4.5 feet that you get is probably going to be plenty for a lot of people, but if they wanted to give this truck a wider market, it's sort of surprising that they didn't create a single cab or an extended cab version with a little bit longer bed that offers just a touch more utility, or the ability to close the tailgate and still have 5 feet of space or something along those lines. I could see that being a lot more useful for companies that need smaller fleet vehicles with pickup beds that don't necessarily have to be trucks. It could be any number of different businesses, but even a private party or somebody purchasing the vehicle for themselves could probably make use of a bed with just a little bit more space if they didn't really want the functionality of having 2 full back doors with a full back seat. It's odd that Ford doesn't have that option. I get that most people are buying pickup trucks now that are full Super Crew cabs that are 4 doors, but it would have been nice to see, and I think the Maverick would have actually been a little bit cooler if you could get an all-wheel drive version with a single cab, and it would make it feel a bit more like a traditional pickup truck. Maybe in the future we'll see something like that from Ford. I won't probably keep my hopes up for it though. So moving forward and talking about the truck's interior specifically, I think it looks pretty solid overall. It's definitely kind of a combination of the Bronco Sport and the Escape and some of Ford's other vehicles, and they tried to carry in the utility theme of it being a pickup, and it's a little bit more progressive and modern in the way it's stylized. And I like that they added a lot of functionality in terms of storage. So things like the actual door panels and the pockets are opened up and kind of cut in such a way that you could fit a bigger water bottle or fit a laptop or something in there, and you just have a bit more accessibility to it. You've got some new like little trays and cubbies and things within the center console. They also added storage underneath the rear seat. So there's a lot of areas where you can put things that you want to keep in the cab but not necessarily throw in the pickup bed, or things that you want to be easier access within this truck. So I think Ford did a really solid job there. Now, some of the shapes and materials used to kind of create this design and to fill out these storage cubbies and areas may not be everybody's favorite. As I said, this is not a super traditional looking truck on the inside, and some of the images I've seen, depending on the package you have, there are bright orange accents and kind of like a brushed steel look in certain areas, and then even kind of a semi-gloss or like satin white that they have in some of the door panels. So it is pretty striking to look at, and like I said, I don't mind the design overall, but I know folks who are maybe looking for something a little less obtrusive may be put off by it. The main thing though is that Ford generally does a good job with the actual layout and functionality of their interiors, and it certainly seems that way. You still have some climate control dials and buttons that are easy access in the center console. The vents are pretty well positioned. The steering wheel is fine. Like I said, I think it's kind of the Bronco Sport steering wheel, just adapted for this truck. So it's a decent layout. And then one of the big pluses is the built-in sync system. And with this truck as standard, you actually get that 8-inch touchscreen, and you also get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is huge. I really, really love that infotainment setup. I think that's one of the best things that Ford has been putting in their vehicles as of late is the sync system. It's also worth noting that there's a lot of safety features carried over into the Maverick that Ford has been implementing on their trucks as of late. So some things you'll see are the blind spot monitoring. Of course, you got a backup camera. You're gonna have the emergency braking system. They also have the automatic high beams on this truck. So there's a couple different things, even lane centering and stuff like that is all here for the Maverick. So it'll be very city friendly, and this shouldn't be a difficult vehicle to drive in traffic by any means. Sometimes all of the additional safety nannies and doodads that they put in there can be a bit overwhelming, and some of them are a little bit annoying, to be honest, but you can usually get into the menus and turn some of that off or adjust it, and I think most people will enjoy it here for the way that this truck is being used. The final section I want to cover is just kind of talking about the overall exterior design and the look of the Maverick. And it's one of those things, I've mentioned this with pretty much every vehicle we talk about, where it's beauty in the eye of the beholder. Some folks are going to like it, some folks are going to hate it, and that's all pretty subjective depending on who you are and what you look for in a vehicle. But it's not a terrible looking truck. I honestly think that from the back and from the sides, it looks pretty nice. It's definitely not flashy by any means. There's really simplistic body lines. The wheel arches are fairly small because it's not a big vehicle. And I like that in the back end, it almost kind of looks like a Ranger, only even more shrunk down. So a lot of those areas are pretty unoffensive, and I think Ford did a nice job of making a decent looking pickup out of this SUV platform. Now, the front end of the vehicle, I'm less impressed with. I don't think that the grille or the headlight design is very attractive at all. It kind of looks like they were attempting to mimic some of the F-150's front end design and the Super Duty and squish it in, and I just don't really care for how small the logo is and the way that bar goes across with the markers or the blinkers in the front that kind of mount into the headlights. It ends up making the headlights look massive on this truck, like way bigger than they should be. So I think the intention was to more so create that C-bar look that Ford is trying to standardize on all of their vehicles, but at least in my eyes that doesn't translate. It's certainly not the ugliest vehicle on the road by any means, and I think a lot of people will be just fine with how it looks. I just wish that Ford would have maybe skewed the design to be a little bit more similar to what the Bronco Sport has for a front end, or even more directly mimic the F-150 front end and just shrink it down a little bit. So to throw in a few more final thoughts before we wrap up this video, like I said earlier, think that the Maverick exists in kind of a cool space, and I'm glad to see manufacturers like Ford pushing for a smaller pickup truck, especially as trucks have continued to get more and more bloated and just scaled up over time. And not just full-size trucks, obviously the mid-size trucks have gotten a lot bigger too, and the current Ranger and Tacoma offerings are a lot bigger than they were back in the day. So it's nice to have something that is a true small pickup in that regard. And I do think that a lot of people who are in this market shopping for this kind of vehicle are going to be able to make good use of the utility that Ford provides in the Maverick. One of the things I have heard people saying in the comments, and we've kind of read and seen around after this reveal, is there's a lot of frustration that you can't get the all-wheel drive system with the base model hybrid engine option. And I kind of alluded to that earlier, that you'd have to do the EcoBoost upgrade in order to get all-wheel drive. But it is a valid concern and valid complaint. I do think that it may be something Ford changes down the road once they get a year or two into production with these. But it is a little unfortunate that you can't reap the benefits of all-wheel drive and have the better fuel economy that you'd get from the hybrid powertrain for people who are kind of looking for that best of both worlds scenario. So we'll see what happens there. With all that being said, that's going to be a wrap on this video. As always, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and definitely let us know down in the comments what you think of the Maverick or how you would option one of these out if you're looking to pick one up for yourself. I'll be kind of scrolling through, checking out those comments as you post them. So thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.